Well, it's two chief ministers in a week for me. I've been in Jersey, done chief minister there. I'm now back to our regular getting together. But first of all, congratulations. As I understand, it's 30 years today since you became an MHK.
Yes, it is. A very long career, which I didn't expect at the time. But yes, I was elected the by-election in Ramsey in 1984. So yes, 30 years today.
A very different man. Had a beard, didn't you?
I did, yes.
And you were McVannon and all that.
Well, I was still a nationalist, yes.
Yes.
I didn't stand as McVannon, but yes, I was still a fiery nationalist in 1984.
Smoothed the edges a bit since then?
Experience changes things a bit, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Well, it's interesting talking to the Chief Minister of Jersey, only because he doesn't do as much media as you, and he was quite interested that we do this sort of every week chat. And in a way, I don't know what you think, but it sometimes gets rid of problems before they get too big, because people hear from you anyway, and you're...
I've always believed strongly that government generally needs to be media friendly, totally accessible to the media, to keep people informed as to what's happening, whether it's good news or bad news. But it's really important that we communicate with the public as widely as we possibly can. And I actually, in the very early days, back in the 80s, was the instigator of the Friday morning Chief Minister's press conference. And I still believe strongly that we should be accessible. Jersey, I think, has a different view on that, and certainly Jersey politicians are a lot more wary of the media than perhaps we are on the island.
Well, we had quite an interesting week with Mr. Houghton. Again, we talked about cameras. This was one of those ideal moments to see what was going on, because apparently it sounded interesting. Were you disappointed?
Yes, to be honest. It was completely unnecessary. The Speaker gave Mr. Houghton every opportunity to withdraw his critical comments of Mr. Tier, who he accused really of misleading the House of Keys. Mr. Houghton, for whatever reason, decided not to apologise or withdraw his comment, and the Speaker had no choice. And it was, I have to say, a case of a sign about, I've heard recently of synthetic rage, I think, on Mr. Houghton's part, because although it was ostensibly about the Isle of Man signing up to FATCA and Mr. Tier signing the international agreement in Berlin, the reality is that Mr. Houghton voted for the introduction of FATCA and for us to sign FATCA. He's never spoken against it in the past, and this is all to do with the debt recovery bill, not with anything to do with FATCA, because Mr. Houghton strongly supports and introduced the debt recovery bill, but Treasury are reluctant to give him the support he needs. This is what the real nub of the problem is. It's unfortunate that this row has totally been artificially manufactured for that purpose, and it's demeaning, frankly, to everybody in the Keys. The whole institution of government gets dragged down by these antics, and there's other ways of resolving these issues rather than having shows of petulance in the Keys.
Okay, well, let's deal with it. I mean, it's been quite a busy week, hasn't it?
It has.
Now, the bus, the children are going to get charged on the bus, but not as much. Like a bit of a U-turn. Parking on the prom was going to be down to an hour, stayed at 2 hours. This all looks like headless sort of government.
No, I appreciate how it looks, and it looks certainly very disjointed, I'm sure, from the public's point of view. But first of all, you need to look at the starting point on this. The Minister of Infrastructure, Mr. Gorn, has an exceptionally difficult job to do in trying to save £5 million in 1 year at the behest of Treasury with the budget cuts. He has done a great job, I think, to reduce that deficit by several million already. And the charges to do with parking and transport were all part of the next phase of reductions. Now, Mr. Gorn felt at the time that he had no choice but to bring the original proposals in. Subsequent to that, though, there have clearly been representations from the retail sector in particular, but also one or two other bodies. Mr. Gorn has looked at it again. We have discussed it in the Council of Ministers. Other ministers, though, have been able to find a certain amount of money within their own budgets to help Mr. Gorn.
DED seems to have chipped in.
DED, obviously, because they have a vested interest in protecting the retail industry, and we have listened to the representatives of the retail industry, so that really bottoms that one out. But so the extra money that's been found has enabled Mr. Gorn to make the announcements that he has. We need to recognise, though, excuse me, Government is frequently criticised for not listening to the public. This is one time where the department has listened.
But you normally do consultations all the time. I mean, they come out left, right, centre. This one, bang out, comes the announcement, then wait for the hoo-ha, and then you sort of slightly withdraw.
Yes, and I think we're doing it for the right purposes. We have, perhaps the whole situation wasn't handled as effectively by Council in the first instance. We accept that. But I think the final recommendations and the outcome that will now evolve from these discussions will be in the best interest of the public. It will help the business community and it will also enable Mr. Gordon to make further steps to rebalance his budget.
But, I mean, these things could have been done some years ago, could they not? I mean, why let it so late now? I mean, I say late only because people are coming out electioneering and people are actually saying they're going to stand. I mean, couldn't this not have been brought in earlier and slower maybe?
Well, you know, government has been, right across government, been looking at different ways to make savings. Every department is doing it. The Department of Infrastructure is a very big department. It has an annual budget of very near 100 million, I think, and is obviously one of the key targets for spending reductions. Now, a wide range of changes have already taken place in there. They've downsized, I think, by over 100 staff. They've made savings in many other areas. And this is just an evolution in the savings process. This is the next stage that we have to move on to. Yes, you could always argue that priorities should have been in a different way, but we are where we are with this. This is the next phase of savings.
I mean, the news just keeps coming out. I mean, the pensions, both public and government pensions, both this week have had the usual thing. We all know this already is happening. The money's going to run out. Things have got to be looked at. People have got to living longer, but want the same sort of money and all that. What do you say about that?
Yes, I would say, first of all, I'm disappointed that we've had to revisit the whole issue so soon after the introduction of the GOS. But the whole process, which the latest unified scheme was based on, started 7 years ago, and conditions were very different 7 years ago. That has had some impact on it. Since the last scheme came in, of course, we've been more successful than we had anticipated in reducing government's headcount. There's something between 700 or 800 jobs gone. We've kept a freeze on wages, so there's not been the big salary increases, which in turn would have led to bigger contributions to the pension fund, and a number of other issues like that. And our absolute commitment is to protect the viability of the pension fund into the long term, so that whilst there may be an increase in contributions from members, their pensions will be guaranteed at the end of it, and that's what we're trying to achieve.
And of course, then you're going to sail away into the sunset on a very nice pension, because
MHKs are involved in this too. MHKs will be paying
now they are, or will be,
and they have been for the last 2 years. All the pension arrangements are being revised. Government members are being involved in just the same way as staff, and it's right that they should be. Anything
else coming out? I mean, you're just going to keep running out bad news at the moment, and then it's all going to be good news in the last year before the election or something?
This has nothing to do with the election whatsoever. We are committed to having a sustainable future for the Isle of Man. This isn't short-termism for the next election. It's the next generation that we are focusing on. We have to take some of these big decisions. The public sector pensions obviously is a high-profile issue, but very recently we reduced a report on CI 65, which shows that we have to bring in major state pension reforms. We have to bring in reforms to the benefits system. There's a whole raft of very serious things, and alongside that we are looking to bring in a single legal entity for government, which will improve, I think, the service delivery from government. It'll provide joined up government and give us better focus in reacting to some of these issues which are in the pipeline.
Now, you said you're going to balance the books, I think early as next year now, but Mr. Cannon sort of disagrees with your figures.
Yes, and I still don't know what Mr. Cannon's argument is in that. I have to go on the information I'm given by Treasury. They believe it will be a close run thing, but we might just get balanced the revenue account, not the whole of government, a year early, next February. We will know closer to the day what in fact that outcome might be. But we are making progress. That's the important thing. We anticipated to rebalance the budget in the life of this House. So we still have, even if we miss the target in February, we will be balanced, I think, given a fair wind in 12 months' time. But then we have to balance things like, or replenish our reserves, our capital fund as well, and that will require more discipline into the future too.
And any more signs of VAT adjustments?
We are making good progress in those discussions. They are very near complete now. I hope early in the new year we will be able to have a final decision on that. But the talks have been quite amicable between UK and Isle of Man Treasuries, and I think we've made some good headway. Ultimately, if we can get a reasonable settlement, which I'm confident we will do, it will give us now a new model for VAT sharing, which will last us for many, many years, and hopefully, once and for all, put the whole VAT to bed finally.
Isle of Man newspapers broke the story about Procter & Gamble moving their operation off Isle of Man, and they're the biggest VAT thing.
Yes.
Does it have an implication when you're doing this formula?
Procter & Gamble left about 12 months ago. And that was, I don't think, anything to do with the Isle of Man's VAT situation. It was, and Procter & Gamble, as you know, is a major worldwide business. They felt that the Isle of Man office, if you like, was too small to fit into their overall global model, and therefore they wanted to pull out.
But this business of having this agreement, and they look at our VAT, and that must be a massive loss.
It doesn't affect the Isle of Man's share of VAT, because all we were doing was collecting the VAT on behalf of the United Kingdom. But there will be a small downsize, because we get administration costs involved in that. I don't actually know what that figure is, but there will be a small loss. But I think Procter & Gamble were paying something like 200 million in total, but that money was going straight into the UK.
So you're not worried about it?
It's done. These things happen. Companies come and go. We obviously are disappointed to lose a big presence like that. But in terms of employment on the island, I think there's only 1 or 2 people involved in it. And as I say, companies' strategies, global strategies, change all the time, and we have to live with that. And we gain some and we lose some. It's life, I'm afraid.